Today is Friday, May 15th, 2026. Welcome to This Week in Natural Refrigerants News, where we recap the top stories on naturalrefrigerants.com. This podcast is generated and read by artificial intelligence and may contain errors. We're your hosts, ATNMO, and the articles for today's podcast were organized by naturalrefrigerants.com's managing editor and written by its writers. You can find links to each article in the show notes. So, looking at the rundown today, it really feels like a look at the friction of scaling natural refrigerants,
Oh, absolutely.
We're basically tracking how the industry is trying to push past the bottleneck. So starting with modular hardware, then moving to macro level city grid stuff, and finally looking at the financial roadblocks.
Right. And let's look at the hardware side first.
Sure.
The Atmosphere America Summit program is set for June 2nd and 3rd in Tarrytown, New York.
Yeah.
And the end user panel really stands out because you have these massive multinational giants like Cargill and IKEA sharing notes with regional players like Saker ShopRite. Plus, there's a whole segment just dedicated to independent retailers.
Which is great. And there's also that hands-on component before the summit even starts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
On June 1st, attendees are doing a site visit to the DeSico & Son store over in Sleepy Hollow to look at their CO2 refrigeration setup.
And that specific DeSico's installation is running on Hill Phoenix technology, which makes a lot of sense given how aggressively they're, trying to standardize these systems.
Right.
They're expanding their transcritical CO2 portfolio with the modular Advancer Ultra for industrial applications, and then they've got the next-gen Flex Mini. Plus, they are prepping those water-cooled R290 solid chill cases for later this year.
So I look at standardizing these platform portfolios, and I have to wonder, are the days of the custom-built bespoke industrial rack just numbered?
It really seems that way.
It feels like the goal is to shift this from a specialty engineering project to, a high-speed assembly line.
Yeah, because by moving to a modular approach, manufacturers drastically lower those initial production costs.
Well,
But, and this is key, they're also building in advanced energy components as baseline standards rather than custom add-ons.
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so like low-pressure ejectors, parallel compression, and the CO2 thermoboost they use at that DeSico site. Those are just becoming part of the standard package to maximize heat reclaim.
Right. But maximizing heat reclaim for a single supermarket is a pretty contained engineering challenge.
Yeah.
Taking that concept and trying to decarbonize an entire urban grid feels like a totally different beast.
Oh, entirely. Yeah.
Like, look at Boston. They're currently funding a $500,000 Boston feasibility study to explore water source district heat pumps.
Yeah. They want to extract thermal energy directly from the local waterways like the Boston Harbor, the Charles River, and the Mystic River.
Which sounds wild.
It does, but the precedent already exists in Europe. You look at the Everland's 30-megawatt CO2 seawater system in Esbjerg, Denmark, and Vicinity Energy is also developing a 35-megawatt ammonia pump right there on the Charles River.
I just struggle to see how the physical engineering of, submerging massive intake pipes into a living waterway isn't a massive logistical nightmare in a dense city like Boston.
Well, the thermodynamics and the pipe engineering are actually highly proven at this point.
Really?
Yeah. The true friction is aligning centuries-old historical city infrastructure with modern utility regulations.
Yeah.
And then, securing the massive upfront capital you need to retrofit an entire district.
Yeah, that capital demand seems to be forcing the market to rethink how we even pay for these systems in the first place.
Definitely.
Like the Base Foundation just won the 2026 Zayed Sustainability Prize for Scaling Cooling as a Service, or CASEX, which is essentially SaaS, but for cooling.
It's a radical shift in the business model.
Yeah.
Instead of a facility carrying the huge CapEx burden of buying a natural refrigerant system up front, the CASEX provider pays for, installs, and owns the equipment.
Right.
The end user merely pays an OpEx fee based on the actual cooling volume they consume.
And that shifts the performance risk entirely off the buyer's plate.
Exactly.
So if an R290 chiller in Nigeria or a transcritical CO2 system in Norway goes down, the end user isn't bleeding cash on repairs. The provider absorbs all that downtime cost.
Which fundamentally changes the provider's incentives, right? When they hold the financial risk of downtime, they are highly motivated to deploy the most durable, efficient natural refrigerants available.
Instead of just whatever the cheapest upfront option is.
Exactly.
So it solves the financial bottleneck. But that brings up the regulatory bottleneck, which is the big focus of the GIZ Green Cooling Summit, happening virtually on May 19th and 20th.
Right.
Because R290 split ACs and chillers have remarkably low incremental costs, but they just aren't scaling globally.
Yeah. And the environmental math is undeniable. If propane units hit just a 50% market share, the data projects a 25% drop in global emissions from split ACs alone.
Wow.
The manufacturing capacity in Asian markets is already there. They're producing the units.
Wait, so if the Asian markets are already manufacturing the hardware at scale and the economics work, where is the roadblock? I mean, why isn't the rest of the world deploying these?
It comes down to regional building codes. They're just incredibly resistant to change.
Of course.
Historical flammability concerns regarding R290 mean that local safety standards require extensive, super slow overhauls before these units are even legally permitted in a lot of global markets.
Right.
Combine that regulatory friction with a severe lack of trained technicians qualified to handle the installation safely, and the hardware just sits there.
So the technology's mature, the climate demands it, but we are effectively waiting for local paperwork and training pipelines to catch up with the physics. This is AT and MO, and this has been the Week in Natural Refrigerant News.